I'll be honest with you, I'm a newer fan to the Fire Emblem series, with my first game being Awakening. And there's nothing wrong with that. When I was younger, the Fire Emblem series looked interesting, albeit only because of Smash. Am I the only one who couldn't tell if Marth was a boy or a girl? Let's just say Melee was a little confusing at first. After seeing Marth and Roy in Smash, I wanted to at least try their games out once. However, I never got around to trying the series out when they finally came to America. I wanted to pick one up for myself, but fear is a funny yet powerful thing, ladies and gentlemen. Aside from being too embarrassed to pick up an anime game, a big reason why it took me so long to dabble in Fire Emblem and other franchises was being intimidated by the potential difficulty. I explicitly remember going to GameStop and seeing Path of Radiance sitting on the shelf, right next to Metroid Prime, both unopened new releases for the GameCube. I had the money, I had the desire, I just didn't have the guts. Also, they were rated teen and I don't think I was quite 12 yet, so... Same thing happened with Radiant Dawn. Perfectly new copy ready for me to buy. But when I looked on the back of the case, my old feelings of inadequacy came flooding back, and I foolishly convinced myself I was too dumb to play. I mean, I was way too cool for weeb stuff anyway. Years later, I picked up Awakening after a friend recommended I give it a try. After a few hours, I fell in love with the strategic gameplay. I had played traditional JRPGs in the past, but I had little to no experience with strategic RPGs. Despite that, it was fun to effectively clear each mission, spacing out experience points between units. Even the times when I messed up were enjoyable. Since then, I've tried a few more Fire Emblem titles, namely from Path of Radiance on. It's fascinating to see the difference between each game and how they build upon or change the gameplay, despite keeping the same grid-based formula. With Fire Emblem Switch supposedly around the corner, please Intelligent Systems, just give us a name! I can't help but think what I want to see in the newest entry. How can the series improve? What can it learn from the past and the present? Here are 9 gameplay features that I want to see in Fire Emblem Switch. Slight disclaimer, these are just my opinions. While I don't dislike any of these games, there are some mechanics I enjoy more than others. Let us begin! When I typically play JRPGs, I make sure to even out the experience between all my units if I can. Having one overpowered character kind of ruins the fun for me in some cases, so I try to avoid beefing up one guy during my first playthrough. But hey, if you're the kind of person who likes a solo Ike, please be my guest. However, in Fire Emblem, making sure your units level up evenly can be a little difficult. Perhaps that's nature's way of weeding out your weak units, but I like to experience the game with all the characters. I don't want to miss anything. Awarding experience after a mission allowed you to even out your party better. There's no helping some units, y'all suck. But awarding XP made it so your favorite units wouldn't get left behind in the dust just because they missed a couple chapters. Grinding eventually replaced the need for awarding XP, but the award system felt a little more rewarding. Sure, taking down zombies or replaying maps can be fun, but working towards submissions added an extra depth to each mission.
You can use Mila's Turnwheel to rewind time and try the turn again.
There are a few reasons why Echoes is my favorite Fire Emblem game, but the one mechanic that made Echoes a blast to play was Mila's Turnwheel. Now, some of you might call it a crutch, a safeguard for inexperienced players. Well, call me Mr. Cripple because I use that mechanic like a third leg. The ability to fix little mistakes without completely redoing the mission is liberating. It's like I have strikes before I get out, so I can take risks and chances before that. In other Fire Emblem games, if you're playing in classic mode that is, one mistake and you're done. That made you worked hours on beefing up? Gone. Forget about it. Either you reset the game or you move along without them. Not so in Echoes. 1 or 2 mistakes are not going to kill you. Just turn the wheel and think a little more strategically. Of course, I understand some might feel this takes away the magic of the series, but I think it enhances it. If you're like me, your first playthrough in any Fire Emblem is with all the characters possible. If a character dies, you reset, no matter what, and that's a huge pain depending on how much time you spent on the level. Silly things like RNG, absent-mindedness, and sucking at video games can ruin everything. If you're lucky, getting a game over resets it for you. If you do reset, you're going to think about what you did wrong and how you fix that problem once you get to that point again. The problem is, you have to get to that point again. I mean, I like replayability, but come on! It's one thing to have strategy, It's another to just apathetically go through the motions. But Mila's Turnwheel is all about strategy. It helps you learn from your mistakes and encourages you to think more. And if you use the Turnwheel properly, there's no need to redo the entire chapter, which saves time and keeps the level and story moving.
Well, if you want to play the easy way, you might as well play in casual mode, you filthy casual.
It's not that I want it to be easier. I want the levels to be challenging to a point, and not just brain dead easy. And I've grown to like having the stakes high with permadeath. At the same time, I don't want to be punished for making a mistake or two. Honestly, I think future Fire Emblem games should incorporate the Turnwheel in one way or another. Whether story related or, hey look, this is a thing now. The Turnwheel is a mechanic that needs to come back in Fire Emblem Switch. What a dumb move. On the subject of difficulty, casual mode is a godsend for newcomers to the series. Even some longtime players enjoy the option to choose a less punishing mode. When I first picked up Awakening, permadeath sounded ridiculously tough and aggravating. Not wanting to make my first Fire Emblem experience a terrible one, I happily play through the game casually. However, since playing past Fire Emblem games, I've come to enjoy the challenge of permadeath. It forces me to think more strategically, instead of sending my units to die all willy-nilly. Although, I guess that can be strategic in its own right. I can take these guys out in one turn, but my mages can't reach them yet. Oh, stall! Do you mind moving over here for me? Thanks.
What's going on? Hey, no, wait, no! Ah! 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 Ah!
That said, permadeath is still not for everyone, so having the option to play with the stakes a little lower is ideal. I hope casual mode continues to be an option in Fire Emblem Switch. It makes the series more accessible for newcomers and offers more options for the player. But Phoenix mode should never return. That's too much, guys, come on.
And dare to scour the darkest of dungeons to hone your strategies for the...
Not everyone enjoyed the dungeon crawling in Echoes, and I can see why. It strays away from typical Fire Emblem gameplay. But for me, it brought a new sense of immersion to Fire Emblem. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say refreshing, but it did mix up gameplay just enough to be enjoyable. I'm not saying all future titles should have dungeon crawling, but I would love to see Intelligent Systems bring it back at least one more time. Of course, they need to improve on it. Make the dungeons a little more interesting to look at. I love Dark Dam Caves as much as the next zombie monster, but they do get boring after a while. Look at that boulder. That is a nice boulder. The more aesthetically different, the better. Create new environments to explore, like an open field or a snowy mountain or something. I wouldn't want this to completely replace the main gameplay, but it could spice it up a bit. At the same time, I wouldn't be heartbroken if dungeons remained exclusive to Gaiden.
Wow, he sure likes Echoes.
Is it a problem? Jeez. Fire Emblem's story is at its best when centered on a set protagonist. While avatars like Robin and Corrin were nice and fun to customize, not having a main character like Ike, Alm, Celica, or Lyn took away from the experience. Sure, Awakening had Chrom and Lucina who basically drove the plot, but Robin was supposed to be the main character. Yet, I felt like he was an aside for most of the game, until the ending twist that is. Corrin was a little better because the story mainly focused on her and Azura, but I still felt Corrin was more of a spectator rather than a key player. Neither Robin nor Corrin had major growth in their respective games. You're playing as yourself, instead of experiencing the plot through developing characters. This made it hard for me to connect with them, even though the avatar was supposed to be me. Awakening and Fates tried as hard as they could to convince you that you, the player, were Robin and Corrin. That style of gameplay really doesn't appeal to me. I don't want to be in this game. I suck. Bring back a main cast of heroes that grows together on a journey of self-discovery and adventure. Let the player experience a new world through the eyes of these characters.
If you would read the in-game text, you would know how deep Robin and Corrin are. Instead, you're too busy praising Echoes.
No. Yes. Sure, most of the character development comes from in-game text, and that's the case with previous Fire Emblem protagonists as well. But most characters in Awakening and Fates, not all, are very one-dimensional, and that includes Robin and Corrin. Although, I'll admit, Corrin is a little more refined than Robin. That said, there's nothing wrong with avatars. you can still tell good stories and have great games with avatars. For example, the Pokemon Company did a good job in the past with avatars, although their recent avatars have been a little soulless. But Pokemon isn't as story-driven as Fire Emblem. While linear, Pokemon's progression is more about gameplay, and that works for an avatar. Fire Emblem, on the other hand, progresses through the plot. An avatar that adds little to a plot-driven game is, in my book, detrimental.
The dual protagonists, Alm and Celica, will join others locked in a tragic war dividing the continent of Valentia.
One of Echoes' major criticisms when it released was the simple story. To these reviewers, I say,
"Puh! Take your overly complicated stories elsewhere."
Sometimes a simple story is all a game needs to be compelling and impactful. A good story doesn't rely on plot devices alone. It utilizes meaningful characters and relationships. That's what Echoes did for me, at least.
Are you sure this isn't an Echoes review?
Shut up, please, just shut up. This mechanic is more of my personal choice. Don't you love a good, heartfelt story? I do. Games like Xenoblade and Twilight Princess mean so much to me because of their story. I would love for Fire Emblem Switch's story to captivate me in the same way. It doesn't have to be complicated. A simple plot can be just as moving and thought-provoking. There's no doubt that Awakening and Fates did wonders for the franchise, skyrocketing it from a niche franchise to a big Nintendo IP. And there's one important reason for that.
Waifus. So many waifus. Too many waifus.
Look, if you like fan service and attractive characters in your Fire Emblem games, that's fine. To each their own. But when the story suffers because of it, that's when I have an issue. For example, Fate's focus on Corrin's pretty siblings took away from Intelligent Systems telling a better story. At times, it felt like I was playing a dating sim.
Speaking of, why hasn't Intelligent Systems made that yet? They could make millions.
Surely there's a balance to be made here, where fan service and plot can come together in perfect harmony, pleasing both sides of the Fire Emblem fanbase.
Oh my gosh, is he bringing up Echoes again? Ugh. I swear I will end you.
While Echoes took away the marriages, it had its share of eye candy as well. It's a JRPG, what are you gonna do? Although the harmony isn't necessarily a foreign concept, past Fire Emblem games have had plenty of attractive characters for fans to cling to. Then again, the fan service wasn't quite as thick as Awakening and Fates. All I'm asking for is less focus on husbandos and waifus, and more on dynamic characters and good storytelling. Is that too much to ask for?
Two units must fall in love and marry. In many cases, they'll have a child.
I hate children.
Zofia is
Wait, let me elaborate. Marriage in Awakening and Fates was actually a pretty cool concept. Partnering up with units to increase defense and attack made relationships worthwhile. I wouldn't mind seeing that kind of mechanic again, but I do not want children. Awakening having children units made sense. Time travelers from the future here to save the past. I get that. All well and good. The children in Fates, however, felt forced. Sure, you can explain it away with dimensions, but why do I need the children? What do they bring to the dinner table that isn't already lukewarm? Unless they make perfect sense in the plot of Fire Emblem Switch, I don't want children.
And that's why I hate children.
Oh, dang it. I thought you'd be on my team. I really like recruiting. Finding new characters to join your party and then looking up online how to recruit, I mean, figuring out how to recruit them on my own is still satisfying. At least in older Fire Emblem games. Recent games just shove the characters in your face with little to no special objective. In a sense, it's easier on the player, because they don't have to worry about some talking chain like in Path of Radiance. Okay, first you have to talk to this guy, who talks to this other guy, who then talks to the first guy. Then you kill him with the second guy. And that's how you recruit him.
Oh man, that's so obvious.
I guess I want to see more unique recruiting scenarios, aside from just talk to this enemy unit. Although, I take talk to unit over just having all the characters handed to me.
On the distant horizon, another full-scale war is mounting.
These are mechanics I would like to see in Fire Emblem Switch, and I think they could help create a less divisive fan base. Then again, you can't please everybody. There will be blind diehards who say they miss old Fire Emblem, and fresh newcomers who wish they could date or marry more than one character. Whatever the case, I'm sure Intelligent Systems is working on a magnificent entry for the Nintendo Switch. I can see it now. Masterpiece. Thank you so much for watching. What gameplay features do you want to see in Fire Emblem Switch? Let us know in the comments below. You know, I feel like I bashed on Awakening and Fates a lot in this video. To clarify, I enjoy both games. I wouldn't bother playing the series if I didn't enjoy the gameplay of those two. However, I will admit I favor Echoes more.
Oh, I knew it!
If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit that little bell for more of our content. If you want to support our team, consider donating $1 to our Patreon.
A little goes a long way.
Plus, you'll get videos and podcast episodes a day early. Goodbye, you good people.